So I'm thrilled to be here at Agile Open Northwest, and Jim Newkirk has come down from Seattle to Portland to participate, and also spent a very nice lunch at AboutUs, talking with our engineers about
Thanks. It was great, by the way. So.
continuous integration. I think was a big subject, and
Yes.
source code control and other things. And I just think that that's something that has. Maybe we don't talk about it so much because it wasn't identified as one of the 12 XP practices, but continuous integration has turned out to be a very important part of getting groups to really understand Agile development.
Right.
And you've found that you can use that as an entry point to Agile.
Well, it's almost it's what it really helps with is if you look at all 12 practices, you can get people go, wow, that seems overwhelming. But in all cases, everybody has to build their software, right? You can't. It's not something that is optional. It's not like, oh, should we talk to the customer or should we do this? It's everybody has to build the software, and so in that regard, I think it's a practice that there isn't a lot of argument about in that regard. It says if you want to build it, it's great. We can build it, and we can, as long as we can do it with one command line execution, everything happens. It's not something that people argue about. So
do you think people are surprised at the impact that has on a team when they have that?
I think in almost every case I've ever seen, people are surprised at how effective it is. Because like I was saying yesterday, the question is how willing are you to let the software be unstable? And this kind of idea of being unstable, it makes me nervous when I think about it.
So you mean, what is the time period? Because like you put some new code in there, it's untried, and then it proves itself.
Right.
So it's that interval between.
It's that interval, and in some cases, months go by in people's software where they're willing to let it be unstable, and this says, and that instability leads to kind of long periods of stabilization, and that's almost impossible to predict in terms of how long that might be and whatever else. So I want to shorten that as much as possible. And in my consulting work, what I would do is, people would say, oh, we're gonna, 15, 20 people are gonna work, and then 3 weeks are gonna go by, and then we're gonna try and integrate it all together. And of course, we go through that period of instability where we tried to merge everything together. So what I want to do is be able to shorten that as much as possible, integrate all the time, think kind of in smaller increments, and move the project forward.
So when you first did that, did that surprise you?
I think it was more I was looking for something like that, because almost all the time we'd run across these things, and that was like the accepted practice.
So it was okay to be unstable,
right.
But that bothered you.
Right, because it was okay to be unstable, but then there was this period where we had to be stable because we had to ship things and stuff like that. So why allow that instability to exist? Let's just shorten.
Now, did you feel a sort of like, why does this bother me and it doesn't bother everybody else, or and I'm right and everybody hasn't caught on yet, or how did you get the confidence to know that this is worth the effort?
I think it was one of the times I had a specific consulting contract, and I was at the company, and they were going through this period, which they were trying to merge a whole bunch of work together, and about 3 or 4 weeks into it, we were still unable to do it. And this wasn't 6 months worth of work. It was a month and a half's worth of work, and we spent a month trying to figure out the right merges, and the answer that they were coming up with was, oh, we just need to better separate the project.
So it's not about integrated software; it's about a bunch of little.
Right. So if we could just parcel it out better, we could solve this problem. And it was like, no, I don't think that's we're never going to be able to parcel it out in such a way that no one can kind of.
That's the fallacy of modularity, right? Because if we just get the modules right, then they'll be then we can do whatever we want with them, as if there's nothing between the modules, But
Right, or we don't have to talk to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
let's
Right.
create that software.
Right, but when we talk to each other, we expose what's inside the modules to some degree, and there's this like blind faith in interfaces.
Right.
Like if we get the interface right, but we know that that's not true.
So I think of it more like that, which is, this is going to happen. We are going to have people working in the same areas of the software.
Mm-hmm.
The solution is not to spread those things apart and create more structure in the code. It's to say, let's have another practice that enables us to work together, but still not have this kind of long period of instability.
So what do you think are the challenges? We're here at Agile Open Northwest, and there's a lot of conversation here about, how far we've come over the last 5 or 10 years, and kind of what's next. And I wonder if you have some thoughts or what practice is being ignored that needs to be paid more attention to.
I've always thought extreme programming, so that they were very prescriptive on the developer side. On the customer side, it was less prescriptive. It said, the customer will come through, they will aggregate, if they were in a sense a customer proxy, they'll aggregate all the requirements and then magically be able to split this up into 1-week iterations and do things like that. In my experience, that can be just as hard or even harder in some cases to do than the actual software itself, figuring out what it should do, how to break it up, and so forth. So
now who did that? Jim's responsible for CodePlex. Who did that breaking up for CodePlex?
The interesting piece about CodePlex was that we worked with a user-centered design person. So the way we came up with the initial stories for CodePlex was we had a series of wireframes about what we wanted from a requirements perspective, and then we built these low-fidelity prototypes. And then we walked around to kind of various stakeholders and said, what do you think of this? And so we had kind of like the model of what CodePlex was long before there was any software.
Now, were you playing the customer role?
So I was the customer.
You were the customer.
Right.
And you felt how difficult it was,
Right.
or were you pretty good at it?
I felt how difficult it was. If the true kind of definition of the XP customer does all that work as well as writing the acceptance tests.
Yes.
And I've never met that person. So I'm waiting to see that. But now I probably could have written the acceptance test, but I've seemed to be a very difficult role to fill. But to go and answer your question, I think this integration of user-centered design into kind of the front-end process to kind of flesh out what the stories are. And I think that, to me, is kind of a real strong area of interest for me, which is...
awesome. Well, I'll look forward to seeing that. So thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks, Ward. Always a pleasure.
We look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks.